May 15, 1943. Somewhere west of Kansas. 20-year-old Feldwebel Vera Hartman presses his face against the train window. He's been traveling for 3 days since leaving Camp Shanks in New York. 3 days watching America roll past like a film he wasn't supposed to see. 3 days trying to understand what his eyes are telling him. The train slows at another dusty station. Amarillo, Texas. On the platform, a man in leather chaps and a wide-brimmed hat watches the train pass. A real cowboy, not a propaganda poster, not a Hollywood actor. An actual American cowboy rolling a cigarette, squinting in the desert sun like this is just another Tuesday. Hartman and 499 other German prisoners of war are about to enter a world that Joseph Goebbels insisted didn't exist. They're Africa Corps soldiers mostly, captured at Kasserine Pass, Tunis, Sicily. Men who'd fought under Rommel in the sand. Men who'd expected to die in the desert. Different desert now. Very different outcome. The Nazi propaganda machine had been crystal clear about what awaited them in American captivity. Barbarism, torture, humiliation. The uncultured mongrels of the New World would treat them like animals. After all, Americans were soft, decadent, cowboys and gangsters, a nation of mixed races without culture or honor. The first shock had come aboard the transport ships. White bread, real coffee, 3 hot meals a day, more food than German soldiers had seen in months of fighting. The same rations American soldiers received, as required by the Geneva Convention. Now, as the train carries them deeper into Texas, the contradictions multiply with every passing mile. Through the windows, they see endless farmland, herds of cattle that stretch to the horizon, oil derricks pumping black gold, towns with electric lights blazing, paved roads, automobiles everywhere, not just for the wealthy, but ordinary people driving to work, to shops, to church. One prisoner will later write to his family, carefully choosing words the censors might allow through. The Americans have so much of everything. They even share it with their enemies. Before we continue with this forgotten story of enemies who became friends, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. These untold chapters of history deserve to be remembered. Camp Hearn, Texas, 30 miles northwest of Houston, built to hold 4,800 prisoners. In reality, it's a small American town dropped into the middle of cotton country. The buses from the train station roll through the main gate. The Germans brace themselves, expecting machine gun towers, attack dogs, brutal guards ready to extract revenge for every American casualty in North Africa and Sicily. Instead, they find barracks with electricity and indoor plumbing, hot showers that actually work, flush toilets, things many of them didn't have back home in Germany, even before the war. The camp commander addresses them through a translator, his tone businesslike rather than cruel. The rules are simple. Work 8 hours per day. Follow camp regulations. 'Cause no trouble. In return, 3 substantial meals daily. Wages of 80 cents per day in camp script. Canteen privileges. Recreation time. Mail from home. Unteroffizier Friedrich Becker can't process what he's hearing. Wages? They're going to pay prisoners of war the same rate as American privates who earn $50 per month? This has to be psychological warfare. Some elaborate American trick. The next morning, they meet their work supervisors. Not soldiers. Not guards. Ranchers. Cotton farmers. Cattlemen. Men in worn denim and leather boots who need hands for the harvest. The American agricultural system is feeding half the free world, but American boys are fighting in Italy, preparing for the invasion of France. These Texas cotton fields stretch for thousands of acres. Without workers, the crop will rot in the fields. The Germans are the answer to every farmer's prayer. A rancher named John Davidson looks over the group of prisoners, selecting men for his cotton fields. He points at the biggest, strongest Germans. Then he does something that stops everyone cold. He walks over, extends his hand, and introduces himself like they're meeting at a church social. In Texas, he explains through the translator, men shake hands before working together. Oberfeldwebel Wilhelm Müller stares at the extended hand. 6 months ago, he was fighting Americans in Tunisia, watching his friends die under Allied artillery. Now one of those Americans wants to shake his hand like an equal, like a human being. He takes it. Davidson's grip is firm, calloused, a working man's hand. The cotton fields of Brazos County stretch for miles under the relentless Texas sun. The work is brutal. Bent backs, bleeding fingers, 100-pound sacks dragged through rows that never seemed to end. But something extraordinary happens in those fields. Something the Reich said was impossible. The German prisoners work alongside Mexican migrant workers, black sharecroppers, poor white tenant farmers. The racial hierarchy the Nazis preached about, the careful categories of superior and inferior, crumbles under the Texas heat. Everyone sweats the same. Everyone's back aches the same. Everyone drinks from the same water bucket passed down the rows. At noon, Rosa Martinez, the ranch cook, rings the dinner bell. The prisoners expect bread and water. Maybe thin soup if they're lucky. Instead, beef stew thick with vegetables. Cornbread dripping with butter. Sweet tea so cold it sweats in the heat. Apple pie for dessert. Rosa doesn't speak German. The prisoners don't speak Spanish. But she ladles extra portions onto their plates and smiles. A smile that transcends language, that says simply, "You're working hard. You should eat well." Food, it turns out, is a universal language. Vera Hartman will remember this meal for the rest of his life. Not because of the food itself, though it's the best he's eaten in 2 years, but because a Mexican woman treats German prisoners with the same kindness she shows everyone else. No hierarchy, no hatred, just human decency. The Third Reich said this was impossible. Racial mixing, equal treatment, common humanity. The Third Reich was wrong. Saturday night, Camp Hern. The recreation hall fills with music, not military marches, not Nazi anthems. Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys on the radio. Western swing. The sound of America in 1943. After Italy switched sides in September 1943, Italian POWs gained more freedoms. They could attend local dances, carefully chaperoned and supervised. German prisoners watched with complicated emotions. Envy certainly, but also something else. Hope, perhaps, that the same privileges might extend to them eventually. Some camps later allowed carefully monitored social events for German prisoners too. Always supervised, always controlled, but still, a slice of normalcy in wartime. A reminder that the world wasn't only barbed wire and guard towers. The prisoners form their own bands, learn American songs, write new ones. A strange fusion emerges. German folk melodies blended with Western swing, music that exists nowhere else in the world. Music that would be impossible to explain to anyone who wasn't there. The letters home create their own crisis. What can they write? How can they describe this to families suffering through Allied bombing? To mothers standing in ration lines? To wives who haven't seen meat in months? Friedrich Becker writes to his wife in Hamburg, "The Americans are not what we were told. They have given us warm clothes and good boots. We eat meat every day. I am saving my wages. When I come home, we will have money." He doesn't mention the true abundance surrounding him. The cars every farmer owns. The electric lights burning all night. The stores packed with goods. The casual waste that would scandalize a German housewife who's been reusing tea bags for 2 years. How could he describe it? She wouldn't believe him anyway. The censors probably wouldn't let it through. Camp McLean, near Amarillo. Here, the Cowboys aren't metaphorical. They're real, and they desperately need help with thousands of head of cattle. The rancher, Thomas Anderson, surveys his new workers, Luftwaffe pilots, panzer crews, U-boat sailors. Not one has ever seen a cow up close. Most have never been within 100 yards of a horse. He sighs. This is going to be interesting. He starts with the absolute basics. How to approach a horse without spooking it. How to hold a rope. How not to get kicked, bitten, or trampled. The Germans are terrified of the animals. The animals are suspicious of the Germans. It's mutual distrust at first sight. But Anderson is patient. His own son is flying B-17s over Germany right now, dropping bombs on someone's hometown. These boys in front of him are someone's sons too. Enemy or not, they're here. And cattle don't care about politics. Within weeks, something magical happens. The Germans take to ranching like they were born to it. Maybe it's their military discipline translating perfectly to ranch work. Maybe it's their engineering minds appreciating the logistics of moving large herds across vast distances. Maybe it's just that working with animals is honest in a way that war never was. Hauptmann Erich Schmidt becomes Anderson's best horseman. He can rope, brand, and doctor cattle with the best of them. At night, he sketches the landscape. Mesas at sunset, longhorns against vast skies, cowboys and Germans working side by side. Images that would be impossible anywhere else in the world. Images he'll keep hidden for decades, because who would believe them? Sunday morning, 1943, within the camps. German prisoners hold their own religious services. Lutheran ministers and Catholic priests among the POWs lead worship. The American military provides hymnals, religious materials, freedom of religion, even for enemies. Even for men who wore swastikas just months ago. Some camps arrange special permits for prisoners to attend local churches on holidays. Christmas 1944. A handful of German POWs sit in the back pews of a small American church. The hymn is Silent Night, originally Still Nacht, written in German over a century ago. They know every word. By the third verse, some are crying. Not from sadness. From the shock of being treated as human beings in an enemy land. From hearing their own language sung without hatred. From feeling, for the first time in years, like men rather than monsters. December 23, 1944. Camp Papago Park, Arizona. 25 U-boat sailors have been digging for 3 months. Their tunnel stretches 178 feet beyond the fence, shored up with stolen wood, ventilated through ingenious engineering. Tonight, they escape. The plan is brilliant in its stupidity. Float down the Salt River to Mexico, live free until Germany wins the war. Because Germany will win. The officers still say so. The Führer promises final victory. They've built a collapsible boat from scrap materials, studied maps from the camp library, saved food and hidden caches. Everything is ready. Everything is perfect. Captain Lieutenant Hans Werner Krauss leads the way through the tunnel. They emerge in the Arizona desert under a full moon. Freedom. They run toward the river, hearts pounding with excitement, and stop dead. The Salt River is dry. Bone dry. Not a drop of water, just sand, rocks, and scrub brush stretching into darkness. Their carefully researched maps were from the 1880s, before the dams, before irrigation transformed the desert. Their meticulously constructed boat is useless. Their perfect plan is dead on arrival. They scatter into the desert as panic replaces excitement. The Arizona desert in December is freezing at night, burning during the day. They have no water, minimal food, no real idea where they are. The desert that looked manageable on antique maps reveals itself as hostile, vast, and utterly unforgiving. Unteroffizier Johann Kramer stumbles into a gas station near Phoenix after 3 days of freedom. He's sunburned, dehydrated, hallucinating. The attendant, an old man named Pete, takes one look at him and knows exactly what he's seeing. Another German escapee. Pete gives him water first, then makes him a sandwich with real meat, then calls the authorities. While they wait, Pete shares his coffee, tells Kramer about his own son somewhere in the Pacific fighting Japanese. 2 Father's sons, one lost in the desert, one lost in a war half a world away. 2 young men who should be home but aren't. Captain Jürgen Wattenberg makes it furthest, all the way to downtown Phoenix. He's sitting in a beer garden on Van Buren Street on January 28th when a street sweeper notices his accent, his odd clothing, his general aura of not belonging. The police find him exhausted, homesick, and, surprisingly, ready to return to camp. Eager, even escaped. America is still America. Abundant, comfortable, impossible to hate the way the propaganda said they should. Spring 1945. The war in Europe is ending. Everyone can feel it. In the camps, the mood shifts dramatically. Letters from home stop coming. When they do arrive, they tell stories of cities reduced to rubble, families scattered or dead, Soviet troops advancing like a flood, everything falling apart. What is there to go back to? Thomas Anderson makes an offer to his German Cowboys. He wishes they could stay, work the ranch permanently. He'd sponsor them if the law allowed. The pay would be good, $100 per month plus room and board, more than they'd make in Germany even before the war started. Certainly more than they'll make in whatever's left of Germany now. But the Geneva Convention is clear. Prisoners must be repatriated. No exceptions, no matter how friendly they've become. No matter how much the ranchers want to keep them. No matter how much some of the prisoners dread going home to ruins and occupation. They must return. But home to what? Soviet occupation? British occupation? American occupation? Rubble? Starvation? A country that no longer exists in any meaningful sense? Ranchers across Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona write to their congressmen. These aren't just prisoners anymore. They're neighbors, friends, the best workers many have ever employed. The letters pile up in Washington. Surely exceptions can be made. Surely common sense should prevail. But the law is the law. International agreements can't be bent for convenience. May 8, 1945. VE-Day. Germany surrenders unconditionally. In Camp Herne, the prisoners gather around radios, listening in heavy silence. Their country is gone. The Third Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years lasted 12. Everything they fought for has turned to ash and rubble. The officers who promised victory were lying or deluded. But something else has been born in these camps, on these ranches, in these churches. Understanding. Friendship. A vision of a different future than anyone imagined possible 3 years ago. That night, John Davidson brings a bottle of whiskey to the camp. Good bourbon, pre-war stock he's been saving. He shares it with Wilhelm Müller and the Germans who've worked his fields for 2 years. They drink to the end of war, to the dead on all sides, to whatever comes next. Müller tells him through an interpreter, who's barely needed anymore after 2 years of working together, that he wants to come back when he can, if he can, when the world settles and the laws allow. America has shown him something Germany never did. That strength doesn't require cruelty. That power doesn't demand hatred. That enemies can become friends over cotton fields and cattle drives. That the propaganda was all lies. The return. The repatriation begins in 1946. Trains reverse their journey. East to the ports, ships to Europe, back to a destroyed continent. But the Germans carry something with them. Not military secrets. Something potentially more powerful, knowledge. They know how Americans farm, how they organize, how they work. They've seen American abundance firsthand and understand it's not magic or natural resources alone. It's methods, machinery, management, things that can be learned, copied, adapted. More importantly, they know Americans now, not the propaganda caricatures. Real people. Thomas Anderson teaching them to ride. Rosa Martinez ladling extra stew. John Davidson shaking their hands as equals. Pete the gas station attendant giving water to an escaped prisoner instead of calling for violence. When they tell these stories in Germany, no one believes them. Americans treating prisoners better than Germany treated its own soldiers? Impossible. Paying them wages? Teaching them skills? Sharing their churches? Pure fantasy. Obviously propaganda or delusion. But the evidence is overwhelming. 425,000 German POWs worked American farms from 1943 to 1946. They harvested millions of dollars in crops, picked cotton by the ton, saved entire harvests that would have rotted in the fields. The American agricultural miracle that fed the Allied war effort? German prisoners helped make it possible. By 1950, something remarkable happens. Immigration laws change. Former prisoners can return to America as immigrants if they wish. Not many take the offer at first. Germany is rebuilding. Families need them. There's work to be done. But some can't forget. 5,000 eventually board ships in Hamburg and Bremen. Not as prisoners this time. As immigrants seeking the America they found in captivity. A former Africa Corps sergeant returns to Texas in 1951. John Davidson is waiting at the train station. Same handshake. Stronger grip now. No translator needed. His English is perfect. Texas accented. He sounds like a cowboy. He marries a local girl within 2 years. Opens a machine shop. Fixes tractors and farm equipment. Becomes known as the best mechanic in the county. His son will go to Texas A&M, study agriculture. His grandson will serve in Afghanistan, U.S. Army, 82nd Airborne. The transformation is complete across 3 generations. Another returns to Arizona. Thomas Anderson has work waiting. The best horseman he ever trained. Eventually, this man saves enough to buy his own ranch. 500 acres near Tucson. Raises quarter horses. Wins prizes at state fairs. His neighbors know his story. They don't care. In Arizona, you're judged by how you work, not where you're from. Even one of the Papago Park escapees returns legally. Opens a small business in Phoenix, not far from where he was captured trying to flee. The irony isn't lost on anyone, but Americans appreciate irony. And second chances. Decades later, former POWs return to visit the camps. They bring their children, their grandchildren. Photo albums filled with images of young men in Wehrmacht uniforms learning to pick cotton, learning to rope cattle, learning that their enemies were human. At one reunion in Texas in 1985, An elderly rancher stands to speak. His voice is weaker than it was during the war, but his message is clear and strong. You boys came here as enemies. You left as friends. You came back as family. That's the American way. That's the cowboy way. That's the human way. The applause goes on for 5 minutes. Former enemies embracing. Men in their 60s crying like children. Not a dry eye in the room. The numbers tell one story. 425,000 German POWs. 700 camps across 46 states. Millions of dollars in agricultural labor. 5,000 eventually returning as immigrants. But the real story isn't in the statistics. It's in the transformations. Nazi soldiers becoming Texas cowboys. Enemies becoming neighbors. Hatred dissolved by hospitality. Propaganda shattered by simple human kindness repeated daily across 3 years. The Germans expected American barbarism. They found American abundance. Not just material abundance, though that was shocking enough. Abundance of spirit. The confidence of a nation so secure it could afford to be generous to its enemies. So strong it could show mercy without fear. In his final letter from Camp McLean before repatriation, one prisoner of war wrote to his mother, "The Americans are cowboys, just like Goebbels said. But he never told us cowboys could be kind. He never told us they would share their food, their skills, their humanity. He never told us they would teach us to ride horses and repair tractors. He never told us they would shake our hands like equals. He never told us the truth about anything. The truth was simpler and more profound than any propaganda." In the American West, German prisoners of war discovered something that transcended nationality, ideology, and war itself. They discovered that enemies are just strangers you haven't worked beside yet. That hatred can't survive a harvest season. That humanity is stronger than any uniform or flag. They came as warriors of the Third Reich. They left as cowboys. And in the dust of Texas cotton fields, the mesa shadows of New Mexico, the desert sun of Arizona, they learned the most dangerous lesson possible for a totalitarian ideology. They learned that their enemies were human, and that they were too.